welcome to this week's episode of Path to Food Security. Now it's part two. We've got Jay Stanford here, who was the head of climate things for the city as well as waste management. Just retired.
Just retired.
Just
that's
retired.
Right.
So we've been talking about that as well. But Jay was on the board of the food bank for a period of time. So he understands our issues very well. But we also partner with the city on a number of different issues. And we'll talk about that shortly as well, because I think that's really important. But Jay, as we move forward with this stuff about food waste, I'm wondering what I think maybe three things have really come in and impacted us about that. One is, I think, just the cost of living. Since the pandemic came along, the cost of living, the cost of food, all of that kind of stuff, everything seems to be costing more these days. I think that's a big thing that gets us to reconsider how we handle food. I do think that the whole idea of tariffs, right? For instance, 90% of the lettuce that we get in London comes from California and Arizona, right? So if tariffs are going to affect that, it means we're going to have to start doing maybe more of our own or
food.
Finding other places to get that from. We've had a globalized system that's greatly benefited us, but it also left to super duper abundance and a lot of waste. We could get something from anywhere in the world, and so we did. And then the third thing I think that's really impacted it has been this idea of kids going hungry in London. We help 6,000 kids a month directly at the food bank. So, a third of the population we help 40,000 unique individuals in London every month, right? And yet a third of them are kids. So that's important, and I think we have to deal with that. But I do think it's got us to look at food a little bit differently now. It's like we used to look at water years ago. When you suddenly get scarcity with it gets difficult. So I think I wanted to talk to you a bit about that. As things like tariffs come in and everything else, there is really going to be a need for Canada and municipalities to consider what it's going to do about its own food. Right. So if a lot of our food or most of our food comes from elsewhere, and there's tariffs and there's great limitation on that, that means we're going to have to grow our own more than we have in the past. And there's been a lot of municipalities. The recent meeting that they had in Ottawa, the Canadian municipalities, they talked about this very thing. The problem is you really can't grow here 5 months of the year or 6 months of the year. So in the past, we just brought it in from elsewhere. But to me, what I have seen within the City of London and also within some other cities, there seems to be a hesitancy. A good example is the construction workers here in London, as they've been around 125 years. So as their gift to London, they're giving the food bank 5 food containers. They're calling it Farm in a Box. Each one of these containers is like 4 acres of land, right? They grow 24/7, and they're putting it up at their site, and all that food will come to the food bank and go out to these different agencies. It's great. They also grow year round in the winter and everything else. So I congratulate the Construction Association for doing it. The problem is the city doesn't know quite how to handle it because it hasn't really been done before. So, and I think that's happening across the country. So the construction workers, they're making their plans available to every construction worker across the country, free of charge, also to food banks. But even in those municipalities, there is a hesitancy. What do you think that is due to now that tariffs are here and now that hunger is here and now that food is so expensive, the three things I was talking about? What will it take for the cities themselves, municipalities themselves, to finally come together on this and move quickly? Or do you think that that's actually happening now?
I think there's some slow movement, positive movement, but I think large cities, they lost a long time ago their connection with the rural and the agricultural areas. They've relied on them, and it's just a function of big problems are in big cities. And so what we have now, and we rely on the farming community and all the farms in southwestern Ontario to bring food into London. So because of that reliance, you actually don't think about the opportunities that also exist. Yeah. So I think here in London and other places, the notion of greenhouses, now it would be different probably in Windsor because they're surrounded by greenhouses out in their area. But greenhouses are not as popular yet in this neck of the woods, and there you see far fewer of them as you head towards Toronto. So municipalities have got to get a better appreciation of the connection. But there will be, understandably, some pushback because of all the other big city problems we have. So I can just see how councils here in London, other communities for large cities, have really got to grapple with that because it's about where is it that you begin to support the local farmer that's outside of your community by buying versus bringing in a lot of those techniques such as the greenhouses right into your urban environment. And then the price of land often within the urban area is a bit higher. So I think there's sort of multiple problems, but I think the connection of food and the fact that big urban cities have probably more food challenges than ever before, I think now people are starting to, they're looking for how can this actually work and what barriers have to be removed.
There's a fourth big component that I frequently write about in the Free Press, but I think it really impacts this. And that's back in 1867 when Canada was born. 87%.
Don't date yourself here, Glenn.
87% of the country lived on the farm or lived rurally. Now 85% lives in cities. Right? So you think, okay, well, that's just a migration. That's what happens. It happened with the Industrial Revolution as well. So those things happen. The problem is that the arrangement back then, federalism as we call it, how Canada is run, really was an arrangement between the federal government and the provinces. And they agreed on quotas and other things as to how they would take in tax money and other resources and share it between the feds and the provinces. So the feds would take things like national security and the provinces ended up with things like health or something like that, education, right? And the problem is as the whole country shifts and moves into cities or more crowded areas, they don't fit into that. No. They're not at the table as these guys are sitting and discussing it. Not only that, the real ideas and creative ideas are actually coming out of municipalities, right? It's where all the major institutions are, so on and so forth. And yet, out of tax money, every dollar of tax money that's taken, only 10 cents goes to municipalities. Right. The other 9 cents goes to these two senior jurisdictions. So it seems to me that if provinces, and I'd be interested in your feeling on this, is cities become more aware of these opportunities around whether it's greenhouses or growing our own or what community groups are already doing and helping them to maximize or leverage what they're doing. The problem is the city has such precious few resources. Right? Like they don't, all they can do is raise taxes if they want to get money. That's the primary way. And what politician is going to run on that? It just ain't going to happen, right? So the cities, which has all the talent, has all this innovation, education, the hospitals, the businesses, corporations, it's fantastic. And yet they get a tenth of what everybody else is getting at the province and the feds. I would have to think that really cripples cities from being able, they might look at an idea like, containers or whatever it is that you're going to do and say, yeah, we actually are really behind that. And how do we fund that? We can't. Unless we find private sector people that want to get into that, we're in trouble. Do you think when you were in the city and you just retired, and I get that, it would seem to me that would always be kind of a cloud hanging in over you, is that you saw these things that you wanted to do, but you realized you had precious little within city resources to be able to bring it all about. Is that true what I'm saying? Or no, that didn't really affect you much?
No, absolutely. Because so much of what we actually do at the municipal level follows provincial policy, direction, and regulations. And they share that with us, and then we're required to do it. And then we are, as staff, we're instructed by council to come up with solutions, but the solutions all cost money, usually. And if the province doesn't back that up with financial programs or the federal government, these things will always be a challenge at the municipal level. You will read stories about how one or two municipalities have vaulted ahead and done something really well, and then other councils get a bit jealous. But I look at it, it really should be reversed. When the provincial government is pushing something, or the federal government, it's got to think about all aspects. Municipalities are great at implementation, but implementation requires the appropriate funding. If not, why are we doing this? So a great example is what has occurred with the provincial government right now, and I'll just spend a minute on this. They have, back in 2018, as part of a push on extended producer responsibility, Recycling now is 100% responsible. The responsibility lies with the businesses that create the materials. They're called producers.
Okay.
So it's referred to as the producer responsibility organizations. They will now be funding all of London's Blue Box recycling program, starting January 1st, 2026.
So it's not just the city or the taxpayer.
That's right. And that's for all of Ontario. We've been going through this now since July 1st, 2023 here in London, where the province has been funding through these industries. But under this notion of extended producer responsibility, the industries have said, we also want cities out of the business. We are going to run the business. So it's interesting. All municipalities are sort of saying, wow, we've been involved in recycling since the mid-'80s, in London's case, 1990. So after 35 years here in London, we're handing over the car keys to grocery stores. We're handing over the car keys to soft drink companies. But they have the responsibility of cradle to grave.
Yes, they have to fund it as well.
They're producing the packages that contain all the materials that we need. They're now required to take them back. So if you start thinking about that model, where government's still kind of a part of it because we're sitting here in the city, does that apply to other aspects where we're actually, you move into a much larger collaboration? It could be called shared responsibility. That was the old Blue Box program. It was 50-50 split. Now it's 100% split. But these models, I think, are very important to bring to other areas. The notion of food waste, food poverty, food insecurity, food security, it impacts so many different levels. But we need everyone working on this together at the same time and sharing that information. So when you say what went on at your board meeting there last week,
last night, yeah.
The idea, they're on to something here, and you mentioned a couple of municipalities are already there. We need them all there. A group like the Association of Municipalities Ontario is a group that has to help spearhead some of that.
Right.
Provincial government has to help spearhead that. It'll take some time and effort, but I think these things can now move much quicker because we have these complete responsibility models for industry, or you've got shared responsibility models that I think need to be put in place. So funding has to be thought of first, not last.
It's this is so critical because I don't know if I'd want to work for a city in this context now that I understand it better. But last year for this program, I interviewed a number of mayors across the country, right? And it's my thing that I gripe about is federalism never included cities, and it should. They all totally agree. Every single mayor agreed. The problem is, in order for that to happen, you have to change the Constitution. So I remember Mike Savage, who at that point was the mayor of Halifax. He's now the lieutenant governor of Nova Scotia. But he was an MP with me, and he's saying, Glen, you're right in what you're saying, but there's no way senior jurisdictions are going to open up the Constitution to deal with this. So groups like AMO, or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, they're now coming to governments and saying, I think they're realizing they're trapped. With all of these things are happening, and they need more funds. And so what they're trying to say is, okay, think more creatively. Maybe give us a certain 1% of a GST or HST, whatever it's going to be, right? Get us that so we have money to work with for these creative ideas for the future. And it seems to me it must be a very, very frustrating thing, because the people who are doing most of the complaining are your neighbor or are really close to City Hall. So it's really, you hear it. It's a very real thing. They're not in Parliament and they're not in Queen's Park. So I just think it's a really hard thing. And I do think, though, that things are beginning to change. It is my sense. I realize the Constitution won't change, not anytime soon. But it really is necessary for community associations and citizens, I think, to be smart enough to realize, stop blaming the city all the time for not getting these things done, when the truth of the matter is the only way they can do that is by raising your taxes.
That's right. And as you say, that's a non-starter.
That is, absolutely.
We all want taxes to go the other way, but we also don't want to give things up, generally, and we also sometimes want more, because that's what we expect of a city. Right. So the city government is a challenge. But I look at that also as an opportunity. And that was what I spent working with staff for 30 years. That don't give up. Find ways to start small. collaborate as quickly as you can, create some success stories, because success attracts more success. It attracts more partners. And eventually you'll find a way where the government will look on and say, I want to be part of that.
Yeah.
And in a group, you mentioned the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, there's a group, part of them called the Green Municipal Funds.
Yes, yeah,
They've been around now probably 20 years. But it's focused on the environment, and it's now more focused on climate action than ever before. But why is that not available in other areas?
Yeah.
So it needs to be there too, because right now the priorities in London are probably the same priorities in other communities: poverty, homelessness,
housing,
food, housing.
Yeah.
So we all have the same challenges.
Yeah.
So climate action, these others are on the back burner. And the reason it's on the back burner is that residents still care. They just care as much about, if not more, about these other items.
Yeah.
And the other items are just so much more visible in the community. And this is not a bad thing, because then we are focusing, I know in London here, there's many great people here in, across the community, at the city, trying to solve this. But it'll take everyone to solve it. Not just, London can't solve it on its own. But food security is part of all of that.
Yeah.
We can't give up on the environment. We can't give up on climate action. We've got to be wise to it all. And one of the best ways, I'll always fall back on this, when we're collectively working together, a collaborative model, it will always be stronger.
Yeah.
And I see any of the work that is going to go forward in London will be premised on that, because the strength in numbers.
Jay, there is a climate emergency action plan for London. You helped put all that together and oversee it. That's part of your title. Can you give us a bit of a history as to how that came about?
Well, climate action, the need for climate action has been around for a long time.
I know.
No doubt about
that
it.
plan.
But in 2019, the Advisory Committee on the Environment, it's a city advisory committee, went to a committee and said, look, other communities are declaring a climate emergency. We should as well. There wasn't a lot of great understanding at the time what it actually meant when you declare an emergency. That word emergency is a very important term, right? Typically deals with a disaster or something coming up, an emergency. Climate change is a slow-moving emergency, and that's one of its challenges. So anyhow, in 2019, the city declares and says we need to have a climate emergency action plan. The pandemic hits in 2020, so at the city, working with a very large team, we had to conduct all our consultation online with the community, with businesses, to help to develop, not the City of London, London's. So it's not a city climate emergency action plan, it's one for all of us. So it took about 2.5 years in development. It got better and better every time we went out and chatted with different people. Expectations were quite high. In fact, at the city, we didn't know what not to do. So we chose at the time, right or wrong, was we're going to lay out 10 areas of focus, tackling so many different areas, from transportation and mobility to housing energy efficiency, to what can the business sector do, what can the academic sector do. Packaged it all together and set up over 200 actions. And you know what? Here we are about 3-4 years later. Out of the 200 actions, I think it's 99% are underway or complete.
And how often do you monitor those actions or the progress of them? Every year? Or?
It was twice a year. It's now once per year, but all our information is now very easy to see online.
Gotcha.
I always say our, because I'm still so proud of what the team was able to accomplish, and I will be for a long time, because it is a true share of responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not city government. It is not a business. It is all of us. And right now, as I said before, Glenn, it is taking a bit of a back seat. It's just the reality of what we're dealing with, the tariff talk, our relationship with the U.S. It is dominating conversation. We've got to solve those issues to get back to climate action. But one thing I'll always encourage is that lifestyle changes, embedding better practices that make things more sustainable. Another term they toss out is called mainstreaming. When things just occur, when you're holding an event at your house, make sure you're using reusable plates. Use cloth napkins. These are things, because you're going to hold another party, so therefore have a stockpile of these. Or if you know that someone in the neighborhood has these, borrow them. These are those little changes that people can do right now. The food waste we talked about, a very, very easy change that not only helps climate action, it puts dollars in your pocket. Dollars that either can stay in your pocket or can be reinvested locally in the community to support other initiatives. So the notion of it, climate action is always costing more money, is false. Some things do, but when you take personal action and look at some of your lifestyle changes, go from one car down to, or go from two cars down to one, or go from one and get on the bus more often, all simple actions. Get on a bike. With the weather that we've been having,
It's been great.
there's no reason why you're not still out on your bike right now, and just make sure you're well lit, because nighttime comes a little bit sooner these days. But these simple actions cost very little. Bottom line, the plan is in place. It is doing reasonably well. We are controlling the best we can the emissions in London. Many things, though, occur at the provincial level and the federal level that work against our plans. So I am always one, celebrate what is achieved in London. People are doing great things here locally. Work with the community that supports all these initiatives. Support businesses that are more environmentally friendly or more with social responsibility. That's how you make a stronger community. And I can guarantee you, Glenn, that's not only happening here in London, but next door in Waterloo and Kitchener. It's happening in Windsor. This is where we have so many similarities. And in London, we've been very, very good at sharing what we have learned with others, and we expect others to do the same with us.
That's really true. I'm going to do something that Jay didn't want me to do, but I'm going to because we've got like 10 minutes left. I want to ask you a personal question.
Okay. I'm going to get a glass of water here
You
first.
better. When I was in Parliament, Jay, I was in for a number of years, as you know. I felt like I was going to a university with the best of teachers, right? With the best of bureaucrats, with the best of researchers, right? So I worked on the Afghanistan file, I worked on climate change file, I worked on the poverty file, and all of the best people in the world were coming to Parliament and presenting to committees or to conferences or things like that we were having. And I remember when I was done in Parliament, I thought, what am I going to do with all of this knowledge? Like, it was knowledge I'd never, like the meeting of the Al Gore thing we were talking about.
Right.
Now that I know that, what do I do with that? When you're in it and you're in the arena, it's great. In fact, it's almost too much knowledge. You kind of have to prioritize and all of that. But then you leave it and you come out of it. And I know for me, I didn't like the political experience too much. I found it far too contentious. I love the food bank because it's everybody working together regardless of opinions. On the other hand, I do feel this sense of accountability or responsibility to what I learned there. And it was very important. And the food bank has given me that opportunity, and also the work we're doing in South Sudan, has given me that opportunity to at least practically keep working on that. You've had 30 years at the city, right? You've just retired, and I'm sure that's going to be a wonderful experience for you and the family. On the other hand, you're one of the smartest people I know. And I know that you would be the first to acknowledge that you learned this in public service. You were trained well, right? You worked with great partners and other things. But now that you are retired, you're sitting here with all this stuff in your head, right? Have you thought, has that been frustrating already, even though you've only just been retired? Or are you looking for ways in which you can take that knowledge, which came at partly public expense and investment? What will you do there? Do you feel that pressure? Because I feel that every day. Do you?
You know what? It happened the very next day.
It did, eh?
It did, because I wanted to go to work. It's funny. So 30 years at the city, 10 years in consulting before that. So after 40 years, I'm just so programmed to work. And so many people are like that. And I really don't like talking about me. I wasn't looking to retire. But there's a point in time when you've got to say you do have to move on. And so I said, yes, the time was right. But as you mentioned, though, I've been so fortunate to work at the city. I still feel a sense of ownership and the desire to give back. So one of the biggest questions I've been asked is what are you going to do? Where are you going to live? And I'm just puzzled by where are you going to live? I'm living in one of the best cities in the world right now. It's got a little bit of everything, and in some cases a lot of everything. So Barb and I, why would we ever consider moving? Our daughter's in northern BC. We will still go visit her once a year. We have the luxury, we're privileged, we can do those types of things. But for me now, it is to what can I do local? What can I do in my neighborhood?
That's great.
What can I do? And just encourage my neighbors to do a little more. And at the same time, there's been so many groups that I've worked with at the city. Are there things that I can do with them?
Yeah.
And Barb's the same way. She retired 3 years ago. She probably doesn't want me to announce that, but she joined Climate SCAN, Seniors
Yes.
for Climate Action now, and she tried a few other organizations. So she has that sort of environmental bent now too. And so it's not that we are perfect from sustainability. We make lots of good decisions and some very poor ones.
Yeah.
But the idea of continuing to give back to the community, it's in my blood, and that's going to be part of it's going to be part of what I do next.
It's one of the great legacies of public service. It remains with you.
Yeah. If it was all about money, I wouldn't have joined city government 30 years ago. When you join the public sector, you give up certain things, and you gain so many other things. But one is also that sense of commitment to the people who, let's face it, pay your salary, the taxpayers of London. I'm a taxpayer. I also want to now be out there working alongside taxpayers.
You can see why Jay and I love Barb and Jay so much. It's been a 30-year love affair we've had with them. I mean, they've just been so fantastic, and for the food bank, but such great examples. Jay, thank you for all you've done for the city. I mean, it's pretty easy to see. I talk with people at the city all the time. I talked to two managers this morning, as I was saying, ex-managers, Ross Fair and John Fleming, who could give you the top marks. They said you were so great. And I think that's to the benefit of us as a city that you had that type of work. So I didn't want these 2 sessions to go by without thanking you for that. It's made a difference to my kids, made a difference to us and to this community.
Well, that's very kind, and thank you very much for sharing that and allowing me to be on your show here and to talk. It's a little bit down a trip down memory lane talking about all of this. But I can't emphasize enough though, Glenn. It's the people I work alongside with, whether they're at the city, and I've known so many people over 30 years, and so many good people. And then the people in the community, Jane and yourself, working alongside. Every year we get excited for these, and we bump into each other from time to time as well. But it's all the other pieces, like a Wayne Dunn, for example. I would not have known Wayne unless he was connected with
From
the
Business
Business
Cares.
Cares.
That's right.
And so all those pieces. So when I bump into Wayne, it always feels like a homecoming. And it's just, London is very special. And so we have challenges now, but if anyone thinks that anyone's giving up, they're wrong. It's now time to dig in even deeper and row together.
That's right. Thank you, Jay. Really appreciate this.
Thanks, Glenn.